What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be doing our Week 12 preview for the 2020 NFL season. This week is pretty interesting because there's the 3 Thanksgiving games, obviously, so let's just get right into this one. Okay, starting off with the morning Thanksgiving game, it's the Houston Texans at the Detroit Lions. You know, the Lions are playing on Thanksgiving's a tradition. This one isn't very interesting. You know, normally the Texans would probably whoop their ass, but the Lions are not as bad as expected, and the Texans are way worse than expected, so I think the Texans are still going to win here. You know, they beat the Patriots, so, you know, we'll have to see how this one goes, but I think the Texans are going to win this one. The next game is Washington football team at the Dallas Cowboys, and so Washington finally got their first non-division win against the Bengals, which was interesting, but also very sad because Joe Burrow got injured. We'll get into that later in the Bengals game, but I think because Washington already beat Dallas, you know, even though it was in Washington, we'll have to see how this one goes, but I do think Washington's going to take the win here. You know, it's the NFC East. Anything can really happen. I'm not 100% sure on who's going to win. You know, I never am, but in this case, you know, the teams are both so bad. They're both 3-7. It's hard to say, but I think Washington's going to take the win here. And so the last and final Thanksgiving game is the Baltimore Ravens at the Pittsburgh Steelers, and obviously I'm really excited for this one as a Steelers fan. You know, it's the gameplay you're watching here. This is a really interesting game. I'm glad we get to play on Thanksgiving because, you know, especially because of how good we're doing this season. It's good that we have another primetime game, and the primetime Thanksgiving game especially. You know, it's a big honor to do that. And it's a division game, arguably the best division rivalry in football. You know, and a couple days ago, if you'd asked me who I thought would win, I thought I would have told you it would have been way closer, but in the last day or two, we found out that the Ravens have had a couple positive COVID tests. I believe it was somewhere around a dozen, and today we found out that, yesterday we found out that Mark Ingram and J.K. Dobbins are both going to be out, which is good because Ingram's a good back, but Dobbins was the one who ran over us in the last game, even though we still ended up winning. So they're down to 2 running backs, which is not terrible. They're still good backs, but obviously not the starters. It's going to be interesting to see how they can impact against our defense, but I'm assuming not very well. But I think the Steelers have a better chance here. We have a couple guys that are, you know, they need to be watched for injuries, like Joe Hayden. And I know Vance McDonald's back in practice, but we got to make sure that he's not sick anymore. It's interesting, but I think just the Steelers are going to have a more complete roster at the time of the game, and we're on a roll. You know, our opponents are scoring less and less points each game we play. So I have the Steelers taking the win here. You know, bias aside, I do think the Steelers are going to win because imagine if more of the players that we don't know that tested positive are big players, you know, like not necessarily Lamar Jackson, but if it was, that would be huge if they had to use RG3 against us when we're on a roll like this, because he beat us last season, you know, as the Ravens starter in the last game of the season. But, you know, I don't think he's doing it this year. You know, we're just a way better team than we were last year, especially with Big Ben back. So I have the Steelers taking the win here. Sorry about that tangent, but here we go. We'll move on. So the next game, the first game for Sunday, is the Las Vegas Raiders at the Atlanta Falcons. This one I think should be pretty one-sided. I think the Raiders are going to take the win. I think they'll cruise to a victory here. You know, they took it to the Kansas City Chiefs in the primetime game on Sunday. The Falcons are not that hard of a team to face. I think the Raiders are going to go on that streak that I've been alluding to in the past couple previews. I just think they're a good team. I think they're a playoff team. We'll have to see if I'm right about that, but in my opinion they are, just because of the way I've seen them play this year. And I thought this before the season as well, but we'll have to see how they play from here. But I definitely have them taking the wins over the Falcons here. The next game is the LA Chargers and the Buffalo Bills. The Bills I think are definitely going to win this one. The Chargers cannot seem to clutch up a win. Even the Raiders game was really close, but you know the call didn't go in their favor and they lost because of that. That one was definitely the closest. That was a game that should have gone their way. The other ones, you know, they just kind of blew it. But that one was arguably a bad call, and it cost them the game. But the Bills are just a better team. You know, they picked apart a team like the Seahawks, and I know they don't have a good defense, but still they were able to hold a lead against Russell Wilson, and that's impressive. You know, I don't see the Chargers as being that big of a challenge compared to that, so I have the Bills taking the win here. So the next game is the Giants at the Bengals, and so this one is interesting because the Bengals do not have Joe Burrow. He tore his ACL, his MCL, and apparently there was some other structural damage done there in that knee. It's really sad because he is really the saving grace of this team, and I think in the future he'll be a great quarterback. He's shown flashes this year for sure, but they only have 2 wins to show for it, and I think he'll definitely improve in the coming years. So it's really sad to see him go down here. So they're gonna have to start Ryan Finley here. It's gonna be a rough one for them, and I think the Giants are actually gonna win here. Bengals are gonna go on a bit of a losing streak. They lost to Washington last week, even with Burrow in for most of the game. I think Finley's not going to be able to help them beat the Giants. I think the Giants are just a better team right now, especially because the Bengals don't have Burrow. If they had Burrow, I'd reconsider that, but I think without Burrow, they're not as good as the Giants, which is not very good. But I still think the Giants, they have a pretty good defense, and Daniel Jones does show some flashes, even though he turns the ball over when it matters most. But I think the Giants are going to take the win here. So the next game is the Titans at the Colts. This is the second meeting between them this season. Last one was a couple of weeks ago on the Thursday night game, which was a really good game. The Titans are on a bit of a streak, but I think the Colts are going to win. They've been showing a lot of promise. I think they're one of those dark horse Super Bowl teams, perhaps, depending on how the AFC playoffs shape up. It's really hard to call the AFC this year. The teams are really good in it. But the Colts, I think, will end up winning the division. I know the Titans just beat the Ravens again, but the Ravens are also on a downslope, and the Titans aren't as impressive as they were in the first couple games, so I definitely have the Colts winning this one at home. This next game is the Carolina Panthers at the Minnesota Vikings, and so the Panthers last week with PJ Walker under center shut out the Detroit Lions, which was impressive, especially for PJ Walker. I'm a big fan of the guy. I watched him in the XFL. I was a big fan of how he played, and once I heard his story about how he got cut so many times by the Colts, I really felt for him, and then got signed to the Panthers. I believe he was the first XFL player signed when they went under and their contracts got released. So that was a really cool story. And then obviously Bridgewater missed the last game. He got to start. He did throw 2 interceptions, but he still led them to a victory, and they shut out the Lions. So I'm really happy for him. I'm not too sure on what Bridgewater's status is for this one, but I do know that the Vikings did lose to the Cowboys, and the Cowboys are not that great of a team. So I think I have Carolina taking a win here. This is an interesting NFC matchup. They're 2 pretty evenly matched teams, and not in the best way. But I think the Panthers are going to win here because I just think they're just a better team right now, especially since the Vikings are coming off a loss to the Cowboys. Next, we have the Arizona Cardinals at the New England Patriots. And so the Patriots are coming off a loss to the Texans, which was not necessarily expected. I thought the Patriots would put up more of a fight than that. But here we are, and now they have to face the Cardinals, who are one of the best teams in the NFC, which is a bit of a shocker. I thought they'd do good offensively, but I thought their defense would hold them down. But they've been doing pretty well, especially in division games. So I think the Cardinals are definitely going to win this. The Patriots are not what they used to be. They're not showing all the promise that they used to be. And Cam Newton's just not who he used to be as a player. I know I've said that like 4 times now, but he's not playing to form. Is he better than some people thought he would be? Sure. A lot of people thought he'd get hurt too much, and the only reason why he's missed games is because of COVID. But it's just a bit of a different situation, and I think it's showing that, maybe Ron Rivera was better of a coach than we thought, considering he coached that amazing 2015 Panthers team. But, it could be just a down year for him, but he's not playing great. I think the Patriots need to look at their next season and think about moving on from him. I know he's only on a 1-year deal, but maybe they just let him walk and draft a quarterback. I think that's what they'll do in this draft, depending on, where they place. I personally don't think the Patriots are going to make playoffs. I think they're going to miss them. So they'll probably be middle of the pack in the AFC, I think that they'll have a decent draft spot, and they'll probably take a quarterback there, whether it's one of the better ones, who knows. We'll have to see how that shapes out, what teams need quarterbacks in the draft in the early on parts. But I think the Patriots will end up drafting a quarterback and moving on from Cam, but I have the Cardinals beating them here. The next game is the Dolphins at the New York Jets. Last time these two played each other, the Dolphins shut out the Jets. I don't necessarily see them shutting them out again, but I do have the Dolphins winning here. Apparently Tua Tagovailoa is still going to be the starter, even though he got benched at the end of the last week's game against the Broncos. Brian Flores said it was just what was best for the team, and Tua agreed. but they still couldn't win against the Broncos, but I think they'll definitely win against the Jets here. So the next game is the Cleveland Browns at the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars are not great, they're coming off a three-point game against the Steelers, and I don't mean that it ended up coming down to 3 points. I mean they only scored 3 points. Jake Luton was just kind of handing the ball over. He threw 4 interceptions, and to only 2 players total. Minka Fitzpatrick and Terrell Edmonds each had 2 picks. And I don't see them doing too well against the Browns either. The Browns are not as good a team as the Steelers, but they're not a team you should just shrug off. The Browns are definitely a playoff contender this year, and now, at the current moment, they're ahead of the Ravens in the AFC North, which is pretty crazy to think about considering the Ravens are coming off a 14-2 season. It's kind of hard to believe that the Browns are better than them now at this current moment, but I definitely have the Browns beating the Jaguars here. I see it not being too close of a game, but who knows. Next game is the San Francisco 49ers at the LA Rams, and the Rams are coming off a Monday night win over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brady did kind of sell at the end. He just totally handed them the ball at the end when the Rams had the lead, so they just ran the clock out and did that. I didn't get a chance to watch too much of the game, so I can't comment a lot on it, but I know Brady didn't play very well in the second half, so the Rams did get off a little easy there, but they didn't mow through the Buccaneers. I didn't think they would, but it was definitely a close game, and they just got the better situation at the end. With that said, though, the Niners are not a great team right now, and so I think the Rams are going to win this one and keep heading up in the NFC, which is pretty crazy. I didn't think the Rams would even make playoffs. I thought they'd be a bottom team this year, so they're definitely shutting me up about my opinion of them before the season. So I think the Rams are going to take the win at home here. So the second to last game for Sunday night is the Kansas City Chiefs at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and so this is definitely an interesting one. The Buccaneers are still, even though Brady's been playing pretty poorly in the last couple games, they're still being looked at as a top NFC team, which I partially agree with, partially don't. I'm still not entirely sold on them, but they are playing one of the best teams in the AFC. They have the best record other than the Steelers, so we'll have to see how this game turns out. I think that the Chiefs are going to end up winning. It could be a really close one, and if the Buccaneers win, I'm not entirely surprised. They could pull off a shocker here, but in the end, I do have the Chiefs taking the win here. And so now for the Sunday night game, it's the Chicago Bears at the Green Bay Packers. It's a nice NFC North matchup. These are usually pretty entertaining. I think Green Bay is going to win here. Chicago's just on a slump after they were 5-1 before. I don't think they've won since then. It's not looking good for the Bears. They had a really hot start, but I don't think it's going up from here. So I definitely have the Packers taking the win in prime time here. And so now for the Monday night game, it's the Seattle Seahawks and the Philadelphia Eagles in an NFC on NFC matchup. It's Seattle's definitely a better team than the Eagles. The Eagles are, in first place in their division because they tied a game, and that's it. They're really not a good team at all, in my opinion. But Seattle isn't the best because their defense is not very good at all. Their passing defense is just terrible. But luckily they have Russell Wilson, and so they're able to get some things done, in general. But I think the Seahawks are definitely going to win here. And so that's going to do it for our Week 12 preview. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Be sure to leave a like if you did, and subscribe if you haven't already. The next one is Week 13. It's going to be next Saturday. So that's December 5th will be the Week 13 preview because we're not going to have this up on Saturday. The Thanksgiving games just made me realize I need to do this earlier in the week because I usually skip the Thursday game for the preview, but there's so many it's not worth skipping all of them, and there is no bye week, so there's extra games. It's just a whole thing. So I decided to do this one a little early here. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Once again, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.